As I see the DAX hit an intraday record of north of 10,000, I remember the days when we used to talk about a dispute with Russia and Europe and what that would mean for German equities, and now it's just happy-go-lucky. It doesn't matter what happens. Talk to me about this dispute over the pipeline and how significant that is for their counterparts in Europe.
Well, it was a big deal, right? This was a $45 billion project. Gazprom's already spent about $10 billion on it, and the whole idea was to have an alternative route for gas supplies called South Stream from Russia through under the Black Sea into southern and western Europe, so that there would be an alternative to Ukraine and Belarus, the existing conduits right now. Brussels was never particularly happy about this idea for two reasons. One, because they didn't like the idea of both Russians controlling the fuel and the means of distribution, the pipeline. So that was a sticking point. And then there was the geopolitical issue of this idea of taking away some of Ukraine's leverage, just as Ukraine is involved in this conflict with Russia and Russian-backed separatists in the east of the country. Ukraine said, hey, you can't do this. If you do that, then the Russians will just send their fuel around us, and then they'll be able to do whatever they want here. So those were the sort of the issues at play, and the Russians finally said, fine, okay, we've started building this pipeline in Bulgaria, but the Bulgarians, under EU pressure, the Russian president yesterday sort of making fun of the Bulgarians, saying they don't have all of their sovereignty, never gave the pipeline permission to go out of Bulgaria. So the Russians said, hey, this pipeline is a pipeline to nowhere, so we'll build another one, not South Stream, but Blue Stream to Turkey. That's a plus. A lot of analysts say for Gazprom it's going to cost about 10 billion euros less. And again, that was going to be an alternative to Western Europe. It didn't necessarily mean additional gas flows. So there will be additional gas flows to Turkey, so that's not necessarily a bad thing, and maybe there could be a hub there as well.
Ryan, just quickly, not necessarily a bad thing on the gas side of things. The ruble?
Extraordinary. Yeah, so we're still north of 50, right? The ruble has been strengthening, but it's still below 50, which is below, weaker than where it started yesterday. That's very dramatic. We heard yesterday speculation that perhaps the central bank had intervened to the tune of spending about $500 million. Today the central bank came out and said, no, we did not. That doesn't mean that you couldn't have had state-controlled banks getting in on the act, however. And we did see a lot of Russian media reports that foreign exchange withdrawals, hard currency withdrawals, were being limited at Russian banks, depending on the bank, between $300 and $5,000 was the cap that they were putting on FX withdrawals. The big concern in all of this, John, is it's one thing to have your currency depreciate. It's another if that creates a run on the banks.